Hi, this is Mark Talks, a bi-weekly podcast where I'm inviting athletes around the world to an episode called Achieve Greatness. We will talk about things on the pitch and we will talk about life off the pitch. Enjoy watching. So today we have the Tiger Woods of Indonesia with us. Timnas national head coach, Bayangkara coach, won the championship in Indonesia. Out of a job at the moment, I'm sure he will be back soon. At the moment, he's enjoying his life with some golf and analyzing. I'm happy to have you with me today, Simon McManamy. Thank you.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. Good to be here.
Maybe as you know, I launched the podcast for the reason to give some inspiration to the youth in Indonesia, to other football players or any athletes or people in general, just to have a different insight in our brain, in our minds, outside what they see on the football pitch. Just to give them a little bit motivation, how to reach dreams, how to believe in themselves. So I've been inviting a few athletes from Indonesia and a few from Europe. One on my list, actually, Sarah recommended you on Instagram.
Oh, really? Yeah. She's my number one fan, bless her.
Yeah. No, you was on the list already because we can always speak well and have a good discussion about things. So
yeah, we always do.
Who I put there. So I prepared some questions about your managing career, Philippines, Indonesia, life besides football, and some rapid questions in the end. So we start with your early career, Philippines. Young coach, managed the national team already. I know the story. I think probably not a lot of people know it. You got good games there, good results. What makes you feel good and what makes you do good in the Philippines, you think?
I think it was, I've had a lot of discussions with the guys that were there at the time, you know, the Filipino players. And we talk back about those days running up to 2010 Suzuki Cup when we made the semi-finals. And we all try and add little bits to try and work out how we were able to do what we did and really changed the face of football in a whole country. And the best way we can describe it, that it was a perfect storm. It was a lot of things coming together that just happened to come together at the right time. You know, I was a young coach. I was very hungry, but really untested at that level, never been at that level before, and came in. It probably helped that I was so naive to the job. I didn't really know what I was undertaking. I didn't know the levels that we might be able to reach. It was just another job where someone said, can you come in and coach this team? And I said, yeah, of course I can. It'd be great. It was an incredible opportunity for me to leave non-league football in the UK to come and work for a national team. I mean, that's fairy tale stuff.
True.
But never did I think that we would actually be very successful once I got that job. You know, there was always on the flight over in the early training sessions, I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm a national team head coach now. That's something really different. What the hell am I doing? And I think that little bit of naivety, that little bit of not really fully understanding the level I was working at, made me very motivated every day just to kind of prove myself. Listen, I can handle this level. I can do it. I don't really know what it takes, but I'm just going to work my ass off to make sure that I can attain that level. And because I was slightly naive, I wasn't scared of it. I didn't know what the level was, and I'm thinking, I'm not quite at that level. I'm going to have to work. I didn't really know. I stepped into it totally blind. So a lot of things kind of went in my favor. And we were able to pull together a team that was used to getting beat left, right, and center. I mean, they used to be the whipping boys of Southeast Asia. They'd always get thumped 5-10-0, you know, against everybody. And we just set about making them really difficult to beat. And I knew that we didn't have as technical players as we did, or in other countries. I knew that we would give away technical ability, but we also had some kind of Western Filipinos, so guys who were born in other countries but had Filipino parents. And we could use that. We could use the physicality they bring, their strength and their size over other Southeast Asians. You know, they towered over them. And really, we made that our biggest weapon. We just set the task of saying, okay, listen, you can be more technical than us, but can you beat us? Can you fight harder than us? Can you compete for every ball? Because that's what we're going to do. And we're going to do it every single ball. Every 50-50 is going to be 70-30, 80-20 us. And we're just going to work on that and see what happens. We're going to work really hard. And we had a sprinkling of talent, you know, guys like Phil Younghusband was at Chelsea for a long time, was one of the leading goal scorers in the reserves, played for the first team in some cup games, you know, and was released at 23, but was a really, really quality player. And even now, people still ask me, oh, you know, is Phil Younghusband available? Is he interested in coming across to certain countries? They're still interested in him. He was a very, very talented footballer. So to have him as kind of a weapon to counter attack with, we had to build an offense based on that. So we made ourselves really, very difficult to beat, very organized, very competitive, very physical, and very fast on the counter attack. And it perfect storm. It kind of fell into place and worked.
You talked about a fairy tale, and you said kind of that hunger maybe was the right thing you could have at that moment of time. You didn't have fear, I think, because you didn't actually know what to expect. You were saying you was kind of like, I go in and I will see what I expect. Do you think that not having fear to fail at that moment was key to success?
Yeah, I think so. Because I think that because I didn't know the level I was about to be playing at or coaching at, I didn't know the teams I was coming up against. I was totally blind to it on the plane over, you know. There was kind of it's like throwing a young 17, 18-year-old on the pitch. You know, the first time Wayne Rooney played for Everton, the first time Marcus Rashford played for Man United. They're just they're so young and fresh and hungry and motivated and fearless. They just go into everything and they don't think about who they're playing against. Oh, I'm playing against an international defender today. Oh, we're playing against Inter Milan today. That's going to cause me some... They're just fearless. They go into it. And not trying to compare myself to those guys, but stepping into that environment, I didn't know who I was up against. I didn't know what Vietnam were like or Indonesia was like. You know, I'm a kid from the UK. I had no idea. So I think that freshness, that naivety almost of not understanding the level I was working at, I went into it as strong as I could and planned as best I could and just did everything to the best of my ability without fearing about what I was facing. I wasn't scared of any of the teams in terms of what I was working against, because really I had no idea. It was really, you know, a 2 or 3 week preparation for the tournament, and then that was, you know, I prepare very differently for games now compared to the way I did 10 years ago. I'm a lot more experienced now, so it would be a very different situation now going into that job as an experienced coach. But back then, I think that the lack of fear really propelled me into, yeah, we can do that and we can do this and we can, because I wasn't thinking we couldn't. I didn't know we couldn't. I didn't know what the opposition held, so it helped.
I think the experienced side of you now brings fear with it?
I'm not sure it's fear. I think we will always be motivated by not wanting to fail. You know, that will always be, and as a coach, once you've failed a few times, you start to realize it's not the end of the world. It's not the be all end all. Just because you get sacked from a job does not mean that you're a terrible coach, you're never going to work again, and you know, this job's over. This career's over. It's not. It just means in that situation you're not the right fit for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And what I went through with the national team, you know, we started off very, very well. The expectation went through the roof with the AFC draw. We then went into those games underprepared, unfortunately, and I have to suffer the consequences of that. And that's part of the job. That's part of the responsibility you take on. You know what you're doing when you sign the contract. So that was a difficult one to take. And you went into games, especially with the national team, you went into games understanding now, compared to the Philippines, going in with Indonesia, I understood what was at stake. I understood what was going to happen if we didn't get good results here. And ultimately it happened. So, but I'm still here. I'm still around. I'm still being asked to do pundit work on Fox Sports. There's still, a lot of interest in me. So it's not the end of the world. It's not,
It isn't.
how bad can it possibly be? I still have an incredible family and incredible life, and I'm still blessed to do this for a living. So at the end of the day, it's about what you see as important, and what are the priorities in your life. The job is just part of your job. It shouldn't really define you. You're an individual person. So to have a fear of that, to have a fear of not winning, well, that means that's your whole life. That's the be all end all. If I don't win, okay, I lose the job. I still have an incredible family, incredible life, and I'm blessed to have done the things I've done. So it's how much you let fear be a part of what you do.
I think I spoke with Evan Dimas yesterday and Evan Bagdim as well on the podcast, and the topic came a little bit as well, like fear, but also failure. I think everyone in life kind of needs failure to grow. Yeah. So we shouldn't be feared about failure. It should be part of the growth of us as human beings, or us athletes, or us as a coach. In your example, that does this moment of time, because you said now it felt like a big thing to take, it will also grow for you as a coach, I think. And also I think in Indonesia, a lot of talents, maybe they got rejected by a trial at clubs, or not get picked for the national team. They can think of it as a failure and will stop with their careers. But I think that's the moment we should push through and show people, or show ourselves, that we're not giving up. I think
I agree. And I think also Indonesia is slightly different from other countries I've worked in. People love their football here. Football is, it's beyond passion. It's something else. It's another level. But because of that fear of failure is not necessarily failing within the team, or failing yourself, or not scoring that goal. It's letting yourself down in front of the fans. Yeah. And in this day and age, what's now come into it is letting yourself down and having to suffer the consequences of social media, because that gets just brutal, absolutely brutal. It's one thing bumping into someone in the street, and if they've got the guts to say something rude to you, then, fair enough. I'm 6'2". You can have a go if you like, but everybody can hide behind social media, and it gives them the right and the ability to say anything they want to say. They would never say it to your face. No. But unfortunately, in this country, there is a culture of, okay, if they don't win, then we have to bully, we have to blame, we have to point fingers, we have to do something so that they know they failed. And I think in this country, that's one of the big fear factors, is that environment. Not necessarily the team, the coach, the management. Not so much that. That's football. That happens everywhere. But the added pressure in this country of so many supporters and so much social media, and that weight that you carry around. I mean, you can see whenever the players win or lose, they go straight on social media to see what people say about them. Yeah. I got lots of likes today. I must have done well. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. People just hammering me. That is part of the modern footballer in Indonesia. And for young players, that can be a massive, massive weight to bear.
You've been in different countries, Philippines, Indonesia, loads more. Football is a universal language. We all know the game, but it's not easy. I know it's not easy to adapt in each country, because every country has its own culture, its own principles. How does Simon does this all the time to adapt? What's your secret behind it?
I don't know if there's a secret. Well, I think it's just you go into the job and you approach it like, I always approach the job in the same way. There's a huge amount of evaluation takes place really quickly. And I have to understand, if I'm going to be effective, firstly, I have to understand the context of where I'm working. So with Bayangkara, I stepped into an environment which was police run. So there's a very strict hierarchy of respect, and I'm working with some guys who are still policemen, some guys who are footballers. So there's a mix there. So I'm understanding that within that, there is a hierarchy of senior police officers and lower police officers. I'm understanding that Bayangkara want to be a better team, but didn't necessarily we're trying to break into the top 5, having finished 8th the year before. But then the larger picture, I'm trying to understand what Indonesian culture is like. And I think what helped me with Bayangkara is that I've already been here twice before. I've had 2 clubs here before. And both of those clubs, effectively, I got sacked from. So you could argue that I failed in those jobs. But like you mentioned earlier in the show, when you fail, you should learn lessons. You know, if you're an analytical guy and you sit and take things seriously, you look back at what you've done and you think, did I do the right thing there? What did I learn? You know, how can I do better? So this third time coming back with Bayangkara, I knew that I've got to do something this time, because otherwise 3 strikes and you're out. I'm never going to be able to work in Indonesia again unless I do something with Bayangkara. And you know, the lessons I'd learned with Mitra Kukar, the failures with Pelita Bandung Raya, we played a lot of young players without too much experience, and they weren't capable. They folded under pressure. So coming into Bayangkara, I knew I had a lot of younger players, but I had to support them with experience. Yeah. So that's why we had guys like Dutra. That's why I brought guys in like Spasiewicz in the first year and Paulo, who bring huge amounts of experience. And then the second year, I'm signing guys like Zumafo and bringing him in to help the younger players. I knew the younger players from my experience with Pelita Bandung Raya back in 2012 would struggle. Yeah. They just couldn't deal with that. So we had to support that. We had to give them confidence through senior players. So you learn lessons when you fail. And I think that those lessons I learned in failure with Pelita Bandung Raya and Mitra Kukar, if I hadn't failed with them, I don't think I'd have won the league with Bayangkara. I don't think we'd have been such a strong setup.
Yeah, I think so. Agree. I know the story. Philippine head coach plays against Indonesia in Gelora Bung Karno, full house, passionate fans. Tell me your story. I think for me, maybe that was the fundamental for you why you're still in Indonesia today. But tell me your side.
It was. Again, if I talk about it now with guys that played for the Philippines back then, so if I catch up with Phil or James or any of the guys that played in that team, there's kind of a knowing nod we give to each other, like we were there, we experienced it. You know, like battle-hardened soldiers who go through a war. You know, they have that knowledge. You know, we were there. You remember that. And whenever we talk about it, everybody who was there still gets goosebumps because of the feeling and the environment that we were coming into. You know. We weren't expected to do anything. I was signed to just take them through qualification and not get through qualification, just get them through qualification and then see what happened on the other side.
Yeah.
And we qualified on goal difference, second. So to then go into the group stage and very nearly top it, beat the defending champions at home, make the semi-finals and play against Indonesia. I mean, even when we got through to the semi-finals, the Philippines still had so many obstacles to deal with because at the time there was a huge amount of political unrest. We had 2 presidents who were both sat in the Sultan Hotel, one in the lobby, one in the restaurant. So as you're coming out, you have to be very careful who you speak to and who you don't. You know, every federation has its politics. The Philippines is no different. Two presidents, both believing they were president, and both would kick you out if you spoke to the other one. So you had a huge amount of issues going on back then. And this has nothing to do with BSSI. This has nothing to do with Indonesia. This is Philippines. So back then you had to deal with that. And then because the Philippines didn't have a home stadium, both of the games, both of our home game and our away game was played in the Bung Karno. Now, as it turned out, I'd have probably preferred that anyway, because, I mean, to play in that environment twice was phenomenal. If we'd have played at home, we maybe would have got a full house, maybe, but people weren't really into their football then. That wasn't, the Azkals weren't there until after, you know, they were born through that game with Indonesia, really.
Yeah.
So to go to that stadium, you know, from the Sultan Hotel to the Bung Karno, that's a walk across a car park. But we had to do it in a bus. And I remember very clearly on the bus, there was a line of policemen down the corridor of the bus, all armed. And there was 3 policemen in front of the bus walking, because the bus was moving slowly because there was so many people. And the policemen were literally pushing people out the way so the bus could move forward, and then push another one and the bus would move forward. And it took us an hour and 15 minutes to get from the Sultan Hotel lobby to the Bung Karno entrance to get into the change room. An hour and 15 minutes. You could walk there quicker. But such was the scale of the Indonesian support. And as we came in, we're sat on the bus, you know, I'm looking out the window and the fans are rocking the back and forwards. So all these Indonesian boys who've never played at this level before, never witnessed these crowds, are just sitting on the bus like this, back and forwards going, oh my God, what are we doing here? You can imagine the intimidation from early on. And this was the old Bung Karno. This wasn't the new one. This wasn't the renovated one. So when you're in the dressing room and you had all the fans above you, there was dust and bits just falling down from the guys who were jumping up and down and shaking the stadium. And, you know, the noise was all around. And then as you walk out, what I love about the Bung Karno, it's a fantastic stadium. And what I love about how you walk out is you come up and you walk up the stairs and you walk up the stairs and then boom, it's there in front of you. You know, it's not like a corridor. No. You just arrive. It's like you're born into this stadium and then this just noise hits you. 90,000 people in that stadium and the place was jumping. I mean, the foundations were rocking. There was that much noise in there. It was an environment that I think only a very fortunate amount of people get to experience, being on the playing end of that, you know. And the guys in the Philippines still talk about the Bung Karno in Indonesia now as one of the greatest experiences of their lives, and it certainly is for me. And the ability to go and do it twice, life-changing, a life-changing experience to experience something at that level.
Okay, understandable. I have the same when I played there with Makassar against Persija, and it was just mind-blowing. Like, wow, I want to experience this more often, you know, like weekly. So
you moved to Persija?
I moved to Persija because you said before, after the Philippines, you went to work in Indonesia at Mitra Kukar. Yeah. What do you think of, what are you thought of Indonesian football back then? Why that move?
I'd been to, so I left the Philippines and I went to Vietnam and I worked in Vietnam and I had a bad experience there. It was a tough league to work in the first place, but I was sold the team by an agent who told me they were competing for the league. And when I got there, I mean, it was quite the opposite. They were down the bottom and struggling. A very difficult place. So I came out of that job kind of a little bit shell-shocked. That was my first league experience in Southeast Asia. I'd been national team. Now I'd had league experience in Vietnam and was a bit shell-shocked. But then I knew that the passion for Indonesian football was great, you know, because we were only a year on from that game in 2010, or those two games. So I was looking forward to Indonesia. I wanted to get back there. I'd had that experience in the Bung Karno. I'd experienced the passion of the fans. And I wanted to work in that environment. I wanted to be around that all the time. So the opportunity then to move to Mitra Kukar was, there was no way I was ever going to turn that down. I was really excited to start.
In 2017, you joined, 2016, you joined Bayangkara, or 2017?
2017, start of 2017, yeah.
Became champions. Nobody expected it, even myself. I couldn't believe it. I still can't. Did you expect it from the beginning?
No way.
No.
I knew we had a good little team, but it's one thing, you know, as we both know now, we're experienced in Indonesia. It's being able to do that every week. It's all right being a great little team who can move the ball, and you see some things in training where it's all comfortable and there's no fans and you're in your home stadium and there's no cameras and you see guys doing great things. And you spoke to Evan Dimas, you know, he was a big part of that success, 2017. Yeah. The ability he had in the middle of the pitch. But what we were able to do is create a system and create a feeling within that team where everybody played to their maximum. And I think the difference between Bayangkara and everyone else that season is that I was able to squeeze the maximum out of that team more regularly, home and away. I was able to get those boys to play at 90 to 100% of their capability more often, I think, than other coaches were. Now, for whatever reason, that's not saying I'm the best coach in the world. It's genuinely not. It's just saying that we struck upon a structure and a formation that we liked playing. It suited how we played. And the boys felt confident. They felt that they could go out and beat anyone playing this shape. And because we didn't have home fans, you know, playing in an empty stadium, playing in a full stadium, it didn't really make a lot of difference for us because no one was ever supporting us. So we never had a lot of fans supporting us. So whether we were against 20,000, 30,000, whether it was an empty stadium, no one was ever supporting us. So I think that kind of helped a little bit when we played away from home. And that season, and the season after, actually, the second season, we won more games away from home than anyone else. And
was
I think
that just a factor, you think?
It's definitely a factor in winning the league because everybody wins their home games. I mean, you've played in the league a few times now. Even the smaller teams. The first couple of years when you went to Sarui, how difficult is it to go to Sarui? They win most of their home games. Yeah. But playing away is much, much harder. And I think you win the league away from home. You don't win the league at home. Everybody wins at home. But being able to go away and take points off guys, that's the difficult one. That's the golden ticket that, gets you to the top of the league towards the end of the season. If you can do that and find a way of doing it, you'll be there or thereabouts at the end of the year.
Quite funny, because one thing why you came to Indonesia was because of the crazy supporters, the fanatic supporters. Then you manage a team which basically have zero supporters.
I know, right? Yeah, I know.
Without supporters. So, how important are supporters, in your opinion?
Well, it's an interesting question you ask that now, because we're starting to see, how important supporters are to players in major leagues around the world. If you look at the impact of not having supporters at games in the UK in the Premier League, there's some funny results coming in. Liverpool getting smashed by Watford and taking a beating from Aston. They haven't got a full stadium. They haven't got their 12th man roaring them on. I don't think the scare factor's there. That fear factor we talked about playing away from home, it's not there. It's just an empty stadium. It's like a training game pre-season. So I think it's a different type of football we're seeing now. In Indonesia, I think if you're going to be successful, most of the time you need your home fans. You need your fans to be behind the team. Mm-hmm. I think that Bayangkara were very lucky. I think that at the time in 2017, Persija and Persib weren't particularly strong. They weren't towards the top of the league. They weren't challenging for the title. It was us and Bali. And Bali had a lot of home fans, but they're not a superpower like Persib or Persija. They're not, they're the second level, if you like. Bayangkara, fifth, sixth level, whatever. But for whatever reason, we weren't being challenged by the big boys. So we didn't have to compete with that. But I think that it is a massive, massive advantage to be a good team and then to have a support like Persija and Persib have. It's a huge advantage, especially over the smaller teams.
So, becoming champion at a team without supporters, going and be named as national team coach with 270 million supporters. You still remember the feeling you felt when you was named national team head coach of Indonesia?
So when I found out I was named national team head coach, I was back in the UK and I'd been home about 2 days, and we'd hired this little cottage just around the corner from where my friends lived in Sussex. And we just got there, and it was the middle of the night, and it was kind of cold, and it was home for Christmas. I was really looking forward to the Christmas break. And then I got a message that I need to check my emails. And I had an email through from president of the federation, who was Joko at the time, Pak Joko. And he said that we've chosen you as our national team head coach. The contract will follow. And I was stunned. I sat there and said, oh my God, I'm a national team head coach again. And I'm the national team head coach of Indonesia, the most populous country on earth, with football as its number one sport, 247 million people. And I got emotional, it was a very proud moment. And all right, it didn't go quite well. It didn't go as well as I'd hoped it would go. No one wants to lose games. No one wants.
No, I just want to know the feeling. But I don't want to know
that feeling. That feeling, I was bouncing off the walls. Couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Couldn't believe it. But I was around people that didn't really understand what that meant.
Yeah.
I tell them, hey, I'm national team coach of Indonesia. Oh, nice, new job, well done. But didn't really grasp what that meant. If I talked about it back here, people were like, "Jeez, really? You're national team coach of Indonesia? Oh my God, that's massive. Are you sure you want that job?" There'd have been a lot more understanding.
Okay.
But amazing. It was a great feeling. It was a great feeling to be a national. If you're a football purist, if you love your football, to be a national team head coach is one of the best feelings in the world. To have a country stand behind you when you go into battle with another country. I mean, it's an incredible feeling. I get emotional at 3 national anthems. My own, Filipino national anthem, Indonesia Raya. That still, they went to my son's school not so long ago, just before COVID. and there was an assembly, and he goes to an international school, so they had a national anthem, and then they had the Indonesian national anthem. And I start getting choked up. I start going, because the last time I heard it was in a stadium against Malaysia in front of 80,000 Malaysians as national team head coach with the, Garuda on my chest. You can't help but buy into that. You can't, it takes some weird type of person for that not to sink in, for that not to resonate through you. It's just a very, very proud moment. So hearing it in my son's school, I've got tears coming down. What am I doing? What's going on here? And Sarah's elbowing, my wife's elbowing me to just man up a little bit. But that's what it does to you. That's what it does to you.
It wasn't on my list, but I will just put it through. Let me hear the Indonesian.
Not a chance. You know it better than I do now because you've got the passport, so you should be able to sing it now.
Wow, I've done it too many times, pal. Too many times.
I bet.
So you've seen the biggest crowds, I think, managing Timnas Indonesia. How did you feel with you say, okay, so many people behind you, and how was it for you, the feeling to be able to stand there in front of thousands of people who support your team? So not at the Philippine side, but at your side, as Indonesia.
It's quite a strange, abstract feeling, really, to walk out in that Bung Karno and that's your home stadium. We discussed earlier, I've been on the other end of that. I've been on the receiving end of being in that stadium as the opposition, and it's really not nice. So to come out there and this is home, this is us, this is what I'm representing is an incredibly, incredibly proud moment. We played away with Myanmar for my first game and we got the win, but that was in an empty stadium. No one watched that game. And we got a lot of press for how we played, and it was something a bit different and some new players involved, which was great. But no one really watched that. But then when we played Vanuatu, the stadium was kind of 60%, 70% full, and we put in a really good performance and won that comfortably, against lower opposition, yes. But that was a really good feeling to win my first home game. I won my first away, won my first home game. That was a really, really nice feeling to walk around the stadium, and after a 6-0, a comfortable 6-0 victory. These are the things you remember as you get older. Those little moments, those little snippets, those mental images, and then the emotions that situation invokes. I will never forget how it felt to stand in that Bung Karno when it's full against Indonesia and for Indonesia. I will never forget those feelings. It's almost indescribable at times.
Yeah, can understand that. You spoke a little bit before about it. I don't want to know everything. I don't think people should know everything. But just a rough story from your side, on a story. The public maybe thought and saw you as a failure. I know the story. I didn't think was a big failure, but it's not up to me as a decision. But your story behind the results, what do you want to, what kind of message you want to give across?
I don't want to sit here and make excuses. That's the last thing I want to do. I put my name on that contract proudly because I'd won the league. I was selected as that head coach and I was proud to take that job on, but I fully knew what would happen if results didn't come in. I wasn't going into that blind like the Philippines job. And we started off really well. We had a really good time. We had a 2 or 3 week training camp leading up to the first game against Myanmar. We had a really good, a fantastic training camp in Australia with players who were out of the spotlight. There wasn't cameras. They didn't have to always do interviews. They were just these foreign kids playing football. That's all Australia saw them as. So they didn't have to do interviews. There wasn't press around. We were just able to get on and train and relax and build a team. And I really enjoyed that training camp. And I think a lot of the players did as well. So we went into that Myanmar game really well prepared. And that's what happens, away to a team higher than us in the standings. All right, it's Myanmar, but they were higher than us in the standings. And that could have been, if you speak to Fano Lillipali, he still has nightmares about that game because he must have missed 4 or 5 opportunities that he'd put away every day of the week. So that could have been double figures, that game. The fact it was 2-0. But to win my first game was important. The fact that it was away from home was important. And then, going to Jordan, that was the next big test. And I was pushing. The federation was saying, do you really want to go to the Far East? And I said, well, listen, or the Middle East. I said, what happens if we get into World Cup qualifying and we have to go to the Middle East, as we did? We can't shy away from it just because once we lost there 10-0. How do we get better? We go there and fail, but we learn. Exactly. But if we don't want to go there, how can we learn if we don't put ourselves in those positions? How do we know what flights to take, how long it's going to take, the effect it's going to have on the players, what food we have to? How do we know these things? Yet you want to prepare for World Cup. You've got to do this. We've got to try and push for a game in the Middle East. So we did, and we managed to get the game against Jordan. And we'd planned again another 2-week training camp running up to that. But then at the same time, if you remember back then, there was the presidential election, and we had the President's Cup, the Piala President, at the same time as the training camp. And I was being pressured in the PSSI offices to shorten the training camp. And I said, listen, this is preparation for World Cup. We're going to the Middle East. This is tough. This isn't easy. This isn't Myanmar. This is Jordan. This is a really tough team. So in the end, I planned 10 training sessions over 2 weeks. In the end, I got 4.
Yeah.
So my original plan was 10. That was shortened to 4 because we had to fit in the Piala President Games, a pre-season tournament. So the pressure from above was saying that the pre-season tournament was more important than going to Jordan and preparing for the World Cup. And this is the frustration. This is the annoyance that people don't get to understand and get to see about working at that level. There are so many other layers and other things that you have to take on board. So that's why we went to Jordan, but we learned a lot there. We learned a lot about shape and formation and what we can and can't do, and playing against good players and how far we have to travel. And there was a lot of frustration coming back from Jordan because I think we didn't do ourselves enough justice. A lot of the players wanted to play Jordan again because they didn't really fear them. They thought, at home we would beat Jordan.
Yeah.
But again, we couldn't get a second game. Nobody wanted to play Indonesia, and certainly no one wanted to come to Indonesia. And that's the stigma, unfortunately, that was carried for a while. So I'm asking, where's this second game? Who are we playing? What's going to happen? And the only reason we ended up playing Vanuatu is because I knew the now coach of Bayangkara, Paul. And I phoned him and said, listen, pal, we've got a day here. Is there any chance you guys want to come over and play us? They were just below us in the rankings as it was. I thought, it's going to be a game. We've played a tough game. We play an easier game. That's good preparation for where we need to get to.
Yeah.
Fortunately, Paul made it happen, pulled a couple of strings, but it was only the fact that I knew the head coach that we had that second game. If I'd not known Paul, we wouldn't have had a second game there. The PSSI weren't able to help. They just, we don't know anyone. Do you know anyone? Hang on a second. Well, I need to organise the games myself.
Yeah.
So we got through that. We did quite well. But the nail in the coffin, really, I think, was the draw for World Cup. It was always going to be, whether I was successful or not, that was going to be judged on how we did in AFF 2020. So that was going to be did Simon make it to the final? Did he win? Did he get knocked out in the group stage? That was going to define whether I'd been good or not. There wasn't really a lot of emphasis put on World Cup when I signed the contract. That wasn't really talked up too much. We'll try and do as best we can in World Cup, but really it's about AFF. But then all of a sudden, the AFF teams get pulled out in World Cup. And it's like that judgment from AFF that was here is now brought forward, 16 months.
Yeah.
So it's a very different situation now. Now we've only been together 6 months and we're going into these games and people they want us to win. Malaysia had been together a lot longer. They're a much more established team. They had a coach there who was in there 2 years. Their league had stopped. They'd been training for 2 months in lead up to the game against Indonesia. We were still playing league games. There was guys coming in 2-3 days before the camp. And it's not like I could pick anyone else. I couldn't then go for younger players because I wasn't allowed to play the younger players because they had other AFF games to play and they hadn't played league games. So it was a really tricky situation trying to make selections. It's really very difficult. If you want to pick the best players, the teams wouldn't release them. Oh, well, we need those back. We can't let you have 3 players from one team. 3 players, wait. So what's more important here? The league games or the national team playing in the World Cup?
Yeah.
But these are some of the things you just have to deal with. These are the politics at the highest level that somehow you have to negotiate. You have to find ways around the obstacles. And the sad thing about the Malaysia game, I thought for 60, 70 minutes, we were really good. We played very, very well. The first half, we were excellent. We scored 2 really good goals that we'd worked on in training. Everything was going quite well. And then it's
So
just...
despite not want to give excuses for that time, especially the support wasn't really there to help you make the best out of it. That's basically the bottom line as well.
I think I don't. It's difficult to be critical of supporters because they've been here long before I was here. The supporters, yeah. I don't want to speak badly of supporters because I understand what part of society makes up supporters and the reasoning for that. And they are the best and worst thing about football in this country, without a shadow of a doubt. Yeah. What I would like is a little bit more understanding of some of the issues and where the blame is held. There's a lot of mixed messages that go out on social media to make sure that the masses are controlled. But people are smart; they understand. They can see when players are playing, and those that get it, and those that don't, and that's just how it is. But when the first game against Malaysia, when the players run out for the warm-up and a flag is held up that says, "Fuck you, losers," across one end of the Bungcarno. And we haven't even kicked a ball yet. And we're coming back from a FIFA ban to play back in the World Cup. It's the first time we're allowed back in. And before a ball is even kicked, we're getting fined again.
Yeah.
That has an effect on the players. This constant frustration. Why can't we not just be positive? Why can we not just be behind the team? Why can we not just be aggressive towards Malaysia? Well, that's secondary. Firstly, it's about Indonesia and the team. But you always get this feeling that some people just want to fight. They just want to cause trouble. They want to be ultras or whatever they want to call themselves. Unfortunately, it's like the UK back in the 70s and 80s. That was just as important as supporting a team, was making sure that you could fight against opponents in the car park afterwards. It's not a big part of football for me, and it shouldn't be there. And I think it spoils an incredible country's passion for football.
Does it go in line, you think, that, of course, winning is the most important in football, we both know, and especially for a coach, maybe that's defining you as a coach even more. But do you think that Indonesia sometimes forgets, or maybe is not educated enough about the process of going to the stage of winning? Like, winning can't be an instant thing that will be there all the time. Of course, in a fairy tale world, your team will always win. But in reality, it's the process towards that moment.
See, my thinking going into those games against Malaysia, Vietnam, Thailand, was that we haven't had enough time to play the way we had played against Myanmar early on, and Jordan. We played with 3 at the back, which a lot of teams are now doing. That's Vietnam play it very successfully because it can be very defensive, it can be very attack-minded. It's a nice flexible formation, and it took a little bit of time for players to understand. But we played it very well against Myanmar. We played it all the way through Australia. We played it against Jordan, and we saw some of the limitations of what some players could do in it and what some couldn't. But then the draw comes out, and we're looking at that Malaysia game, and we're saying, well, is this the right platform to play 3 at the back? Are we able to justify playing the way we've been planning for the last kind of 4 or 5 months, given the fact that now expectation has gone through the roof and people expect us to win that game? Are players still going to perform in that we talked about fear earlier. Are we going to go into that game with 3 at the back and players are going to be scared? Well, we're only playing 3 at the back today against Malaysia in the World Cup. Oh my God, there was so many factors there that we're thinking. And I sat down with my other coaches and I said, what do you think? Should we go ahead with this? Do you think we should keep playing the way we want to play? Should we keep taking the process forward in changing the style of play and finding a formation that fits? Or do we go back to a formation where players are comfortable, where they understand the roles in a 4-2-3-1? A lot of teams in the league play that. We played against Vanuatu and looked strong. So do we drop back to that formation where it's a little bit more familiar, because we don't have time with these players on the pitch? We're not going to get the time because they're playing league games. We can't have a 3-month training camp like Malaysia can. So how do we combat this? What do we do? And the decision I made the final decision that we would switch to a 4-2-3-1 instead of a 3-4-3 that we've been playing. And,
so short instead of long-term building expectation.
We kind of had to go short-term because we knew the expectation would be through the roof. And if we went through those games and got beat 3-0, 4-0, 5-0, playing a new shape, I had people saying, well, yeah, they're playing a new shape. Yeah, but we lost. I'd be out of the job. If I lost 3-0 to Malaysia straight away, I'd been out of the job after that game. Such would have been the pressure.
Yeah.
So we had to kind of find a balance. It was a really tricky. That draw made it really difficult for us because if it had been Jordan, Oman, Uzbekistan, we could have played 3-4-3, gained confidence against them, and the result would be minimal. It wasn't. Yeah. It doesn't really matter whether we beat Uzbekistan or not. No one really cares. But if it's Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, it's very different. It's very different. The expectation rises because people think we can win the games, but based on pure hope, not based on any technical factor, because we were miles behind in terms of preparation.
No, okay. Back to back. We finished with some questions about Timnas. Why, in other people's minds, maybe it wasn't going well, and you explained why. Yeah. Your opinion about it. I think for me it was clear. I think the public should know it was clear. If you want to add anything on where we left last time, feel free. If you missed anything out, otherwise I will move on with the next questions. But if you have on your mind something you want to share, please share.
No, not really. Just it's no secret. I think anyone who understands football understands the situation that the national team was in. Understands the fact that nothing was done with the senior national team for at least the last 2-3 years. Luis Milla came in great results and used a lot of the younger players in order to get a good result at Asian Games. But the only senior players he used was Lillapali and Beto, who scored all the goals for that team in Asian Games. So then when it comes to the senior team, so many senior players just weren't getting used. So it was a difficult situation. It was just tricky. And to add to an even more tricky situation, when that draw was made and those teams came out and the expectation went through the roof, that was just a really bad mix, a really bad cocktail. It didn't work out, and it was a difficult one that me and my staff had to sit down and we had a lot of discussions about. Are we ready to play with 3 at the back? Can we really play a new shape? Do we have enough time in training? Probably not. Do we have to revert back to something that players are familiar with and really, for the time being, just get through these games? Not necessarily develop, not necessarily try and take the national team forward. Let's, for the sake of the national team, let's get through these games with all right performances. And then we can talk about it in the new year. We can push on for AFF 2020. But expectation as it is, everybody knows the results. The one against Malaysia was frustrating because we played really well in the first half, I thought, and looked fairly comfortable. But the amount of games that players were playing just it was too much, and we dropped off after 70 minutes. And what's sad is that about that first game, the 2 things that we talked about was the right fullback gets very high and puts in a lot of crosses. He's got a lot of quality, and a lot of their goals come through him. And the finishing will be done by their naturalised player. He'll be the one that puts the ball in the back of the net. And for the last goal, he gets down the wing, puts a good cross in, the naturalised guy puts it in the back of the net. It's for a coach, that's when it's really frustrating, is when opposition scores goals that you've already talked about in the pre-game. You already know is going to happen. The players know it, but for whatever reason, it doesn't happen. That's the frustrating bit. But it is what it is. And I think people will always, people that don't necessarily understand will just point fingers at the coach, and that's how it is. And I've got to be strong enough to deal with that, and I am comfortably. But there are a few things that we can point to say, well, if this was better, we'd have had better results. If this would worked in our favour, if we'd had a better draw, if the league hadn't been playing at the same time, if we'd had the same preparation as Malaysia, I'm sure we'd have won both those games against Malaysia. It is what it is. We move on. We move on, and we look at what's next.
Yeah, I know you as a strong coach, good character, always positive. I think that made you also very successful in Indonesia. A little bit personal question as well. Maybe a thank you note as well. I wasn't naturalized yet. I am today. A huge thank you to you for calling me up last season already for the national team. I have to thank you a lot for that moment as well in my career, because I think it helped me as well being where I am today. What was the reason for you to call me up already at that moment? And why did you think I should be part of your plans?
Well, I thought at the time there are a lot of good midfielders, but not many with the experience that you have. And going into these national team games, you know, to be honest with you, with yourself, it was more short-term thinking. Who can I bring into the squad who's just going to add a bit of steel and protect some of the younger players that we're trying to develop? So we're trying to find that balance. You coming in with the experience you have, you know, a strong physical centre midfielder who can play. You can add to the playing style, but you can also back up strength in the middle there. And obviously, if we're playing national team and playing against different cultures, it's one thing just playing Indonesian culture all the time. You know, the players are comfortable with that. But what we learned from Jordan is that some players go into a bubble when it's up against them. Good players that we know and love that are very, very good in the league domestically, then travel, and all of a sudden they're outside of their comfort bubble, and that becomes then really difficult. And the thought process for you coming in would then, you'd be able to kind of shepherd them through it, put your arm around them and help them through those games because of where you've played and where your career has taken you. You're used to adapting to different cultures, whereas some of the Indonesian players weren't. So the thought process of bringing you in was to just add a little bit more experience to that midfield, help players through, you know, push them on a little bit, and create this team that can be very difficult to beat. And at the time, I thought, well, you're going to be a part of this. You know, your passport is on the way. Why not get you in early while we're having training camps, just so that you start to get used to. Firstly, me as a coach, 'cause it's the first time we've worked together. We were still in the mind to think about playing a different shape, so wanted to get you used to that, so that by the time you had your passport, you'd already been in the team, players were already used to you, you'd already had an effect, and you just slipped straight into that squad. There wasn't a kind of transition period for you playing at that level. So it was to be fair, it was the same with Dutra. You know, I as soon as I knew that he was on his way to getting a passport, I wanted his experience in that team as well. It was never my intention to play a full team of naturalized players. I didn't want to do that, but I think that there are a lot of teams in this part of the world who are benefiting greatly from doing that. You know, the Philippines, look at where they've gone to now based on playing. It's not the same, it's not naturalized, but they're using players that play in other leagues as opposed to the Philippines league. So I wanted to take a little bit of that to help some of the younger players that were with Luis Milla in the Asian Games previously to kind of grow, and we kind of combined that squad. But like I said, when that draw came out, it became less about development and it became about getting through those games, because I knew that my job was on the line as soon as that draw came out. So that period from kind of the start of the draw through to Christmas, that period we just had to survive. That's needed. But I like the guys that, you know, go out with the mentality that, you know, if you get kicked in the first 5 minutes, you stand up. And the harder you get kicked, the quicker you stand up. Just to let that guy know that, no, that's not going to happen today. You kick me all you want, but, you know, the harder you kick me, the quicker I'm getting up. That's the mentality I like.
That's your guy.
That's my guy. That's the guy that I'm going to put first name down on the team list every week.
Okay, so everyone who will work together with Simon in the near future, be that guy.
Take note. Anyone who dives, no, I don't really have time for diving. And what I say to players in this day and age is that if you get fouled, let the referee know you've been fouled. However way you need to do that. But if you haven't been fouled and you're trying to gain an advantage from that, then I'm not interested in that, even as your coach. At Pelita Bandung Raya back in the day, because I had a lot of young players, I would make them do push-ups if I thought they dived. And they would do push-ups in friendlies in the middle of the game. I'd be shouting at my centre forward, 10 right there where you're coming off the pitch. So he goes over and has to do 10 push-ups in the opposition penalty box while the game's going on. He's doing push-ups. The opposition's looking at me going, what on earth is going here? But you can guarantee he was that embarrassed, he never did it again. Never, ever did it again. He won't be diving. No, he won't be diving again because he was that embarrassed to do push-ups. So I don't like diving. But you have to let the referee know you've been fouled because it is, it's difficult for them.
True. Simon Lewis in the first half comes back in the dressing room. What will he be saying to the team?
Oh, I have plenty of different characters that I can bring out at any time. I think every coach has to. You know, this is the whole skill of coaching. As a coach, you have once the whistle starts, you know, as soon as that whistle blows, during the game you have minimal input, and then you have a 15-minute break, of which you have about 8 minutes to do something. By the
Yeah.
time the players have walked off the pitch, walked back on the pitch, you've got 8 minutes. So I put on my watch, I have a timer of 8 minutes, and I have an alarm that
Okay.
goes off when it's 4. And I do that just in case for the first 4 minutes, I'm taking the paint off the walls because I'm so angry. That alarm reminds me, okay, I can't go 8 minutes angry. I can go 4 minutes angry, shouting, screaming, throwing things. That's fine because I need that reaction. But then I've got to be constructive. Then I've got to say, okay, listen, this. You've had your telling off. This is how we get back into the game. Now I've got your attention. Now you understand that you haven't played well. This is how we get back in the game. So I always have that 8 minute and 4 minute alarm that goes off. But
Nice.
I think the skill of coaching is to be able to raise the volume and get a reaction when you need to.
Role model. Simon's role model. Who is his favorite coach? Where you look up to, or have you been looking up to in the past?
I don't know. You know, I like to take little bits from everyone. I love the way that Mourinho is not scared of playing the way he wants to play. He's not searching for beautiful football. He's just searching for trophies and winning. He doesn't care about possession. He doesn't care about what people say about his teams. He just wants to win, and you can't argue it. He's probably one of the coaches that's won the most in recent times. Guardiola, you have to be impressed by in terms of how his sides play, but he always plays with really, really good squads. I'd love to see him do that with the greatest respect, Burnley or West Ham. Can he still play the same football? An interesting question. But there was a guy that I've always looked up to, and I've read a lot about him. Was a guy called Jock Stein, who was a Scottish manager. And back in the 60s, he was head coach of Celtic. Now, he took a Glasgow team, a team of players from Glasgow, all the way to European, what was the Champions League final, and beat Inter Milan in the final in Lisbon, beat them 2-1. And what he did with that team, every single player on that squad, in that 11 that played that day, they came from within 10 miles of the stadium. And that's an incredible statistic that will probably never be beaten. So to go up against the odds with a team like that, of just guys who wanted to fight for the badge, you know, that was a real inspiration for me. And I took a lot from his teachings. He wasn't necessarily all about great football. He was about how do we come together as a team? Can we work hard enough to get the 3 points today? And he was a real inspiration.
Okay, interesting. Very interesting. Any words for a young coach who will just start their career in Indonesia or abroad, whoever is watching? But what would be your advice to them?
You're going to win at times in your career, but you're going to lose. And you're not going to win every game you play. And dealing with how you lose is probably more important than dealing with how you win. You know, if you win, fantastic, you go to sleep, great. If you lose, especially in a job like I've had over the last couple of years, you know, your job might be on the line, the pressure increases, and you have to find a way to deal with that. Personally, away from it, mentally, at home, you know, how you deal with that pressure on your shoulders. I think making sure that your team understands they are going to lose at times, but when they lose, then they have to learn. If they lose and don't learn, then, you know, you're doing something wrong. So I think understanding that the road is going to be tough. You're not going to win every game. And, you know, if you want a career in this game, you're probably going to be sacked a few times as well, because it doesn't always work out. And I think it doesn't always fall into place. Sometimes it does, by Ankara. Sometimes it doesn't. And you're dealing with things outside of your control. You know, in this part of the world, you just have to be content with the fact that a good percentage of my job, especially with the national team, was out of my control, but I'm still responsible for it. I'm still responsible for that, but I'm not doing that. That wasn't anything to do with me, but I get blamed for it. That's part of my responsibility. That's why I put my name on the contract. So
yeah,
I think getting your head around that is, especially for this part of the world, is a big factor in success.
Who do you think of Indonesian players, you know, or in the country, will become a good coach after their playing career?
A good coach. Well, I think one on the way there is Firman Utina. I think he's on the way to being a very good coach. He's very technically minded, wants to know about the game, likes the analytical stuff. Another one that would be a good coach. I think maybe someone like Beto. Beto would probably go on to be a very good coach. I think, you know, he's coming towards the end of his career. He can still what he does, but he knows he's coming towards the end of his career. But again, he's someone who knows the game, who's very good with people, can translate that into a way that people will probably want to play for him. I think he would be very, very good at coaching.
Any advice you give young players in Indonesia who are realizing their dreams at the moment, who are fighting hard every day, who have periods in their life which will be tough, which will be hard, which will be challenging? Just a general advice from a national team head coach, from a coach who has won the championship. What would be your advice be to young children in this country?
There are a million obstacles in the way of youngsters making it through to the national team, but it happens, and you have to have the belief that day to day, everything you're doing is just giving you more and more of a chance. When you stop doing the extra, when you stop doing the extra runs, the extra training, the extra free kicks after practice, that's when your chances start to drop. Because if you're training to be the best in Indonesia, then you're never really going to get there. You should be training to be the best in the world. You should be training to be better than anyone you know. You should be doing things and looking for ways to find ways of getting better that other people aren't doing. And there is a million examples in the world for you to do that. But if you're just training to get into a Persib team, to be good for Indonesia, that's not enough. And that's one of the problems Indonesia have had over the last 20, 30 years. There's not enough players who have the vision to say, I want to be the first player. I want to be the best player in, you know, my generation. I want to be the first Indonesian player to play in the Premier League and set that as a target, you know, and it's possible. I don't think it's a million miles away. There's a huge amount of talent in Indonesia, a huge amount of talent. It just, a lot of the time it goes uncoached or it goes badly coached from a young age. And once it gets to senior levels, there's a problem with, you know, youngsters just being available to take money and be comfortable in an Indonesian league bubble. If more players were pushing beyond that, if more players were, you know, pushing that bar that higher, it would create more opportunities for more younger players to come through as well. So I think, you know, don't train to be the best in Indonesia, train to be the best in the world. That will only push you on to higher and greater things.
Agree. Totally agree. Do you think that that Indonesian players in general are too comfortable in their comfort zone?
Yes, 100%.
And 100%. They are fearing actually to go out of that comfort zone to explore?
I think there's two parts to this. I think personally, Indonesian players are too comfortable because culturally, one of the main priorities for any young Indonesian male growing up is to provide for his family. That's such a big motivating factor, more so than Lamborghinis and women and you know, all of this. That's not as important. Maybe it is further on down the line, but when they first get into football, it's about providing for family. And unfortunately, because money is good in Indonesia compared to maybe other leagues around the world of a similar standard, once you do get your first contract, you've ticked that main priority straight away. You've looked after your family and probably your family's family. So it's a difficult one then to okay, now I need to kick on to the next level. When your number one priority, you've just ticked off the list.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult cultural trait. But then you also have to factor in the fact that this is the most populous country on earth with football as its number one sport. And with social media the way it is, the players that went to Jordan, as soon as we failed against Jordan and lost 4-1, they're on their phones in the dressing room. What are people saying about me? Oh my God, you know, what they're saying about my family. They're calling me Anjing this, Anjing the blah, 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 blah. But this is the pressure that comes with playing in Indonesia, is that when you play in front of so many people, all of those people who watch you play then have a voice as soon as you get home. And if you start looking at your phone, you hear every single one of those voices. So it's this kind of, you know, you want to push, you want to be good, but at the same time, you don't want to fail too many times. And that fear then becomes a factor. They don't want to fear in front of so many people because so many people will tell them you have failed, you're not a very good player. And then that's difficult to deal with. So I think it's quite individual to Indonesia, these problems, both culturally and from a social media sense. It does make it very difficult. This country isn't necessarily massively positive about how the way players play. They want an answer. They want not an excuse. They want to blame. They want something they can point at and say that wasn't right. Not, never mind, boys. We'll get them next time. And that's half the time what these players need.
Nice message, very nice message, and I think people watching, the generation to come who's watching, can learn a lot from that message. Because what you said, I also agree with the fact that there's a lot of talent here,
Yeah.
a lot of raw talent, which in many ways is uneducated. And one of the main reasons I started this podcast was to be able to help a little bit with education. I don't say I do everything right and I do everything good or you, but I think by speaking about it, you make it a topic, and people can take out their own
Yeah.
positives from it. And I think
I
that
think
can,
we've had this discussion quite a bit. But I think it's quite interesting when two football people talk. It's a very different conversation from someone from the media asking you questions. Mark, how do you think you played today? How do you think you did this? You know, it's very stale, very boring questions that you just switch on, you know, play the automatic answer that you do every press conference. When it's two football people talking who both know what it's like, who both understand the context a lot more and have had to go through it, the conversation, the information that comes out of that is so much more interesting. I was listening to the one you did with Irfan, and some of the things that were coming out about his experiences there were really fascinating.
yeah, which maybe he have never shared in public,
Yeah.
because the questions never really popped up, because it was
Didn't
always the
touch on that.
same. They didn't touch on that, and even I knew things out of his podcast which I never knew about him. I think that's a little bit.
Yeah, very worthwhile. Very worthwhile. It should be very interesting to listen to if people are prepared to take the time to sit down and listen to it.
Exactly. I have a few rapid questions for you.
Okay, go
so
for
now
it.
I don't think too much.
Yeah.
Fire your way up to me. Attack or defense?
Defense,
Jose Mourinho or Pep Guardiola?
Jose.
Lose in the last minute or got many players injured?
Ooh,
Difficult one.
losing the last minute.
He cares about his people. I love that. Zonal marking or man marking?
Man marking, do your job.
Most talented Indonesian player?
Evan Dimas.
Coaching club or coaching a country?
Oh, that's tough. Different jobs. Very different jobs. Club.
If you can choose one Indonesian club to coach now, which do you prefer?
Oh, wow. Thanks for getting me in trouble.
Persija.
Bayangkara. Easy way out.
Philippines or Indonesia?
Indonesia. I did all I can with the Philippines. Indonesia, job half done.
Go back to Europe or move to another Southeast Asia country?
Europe. It's got to be Europe.
Phil
10
Young
years here
husband.
now.
10 years, okay. Phil Young husband or Beto Gonzalez?
Phil Young husband.
Describe 3 words about your coaching style.
Passionate, organised, and motivated.
Last one, very difficult one. Football or golf?
Yeah. Oh, that's not difficult. It's football all day long. That's not difficult. That's easy. That's the easiest one so far.
That was the easiest one so far. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. This were my questions lined up for you. Hope you enjoyed the questions, the answers. Do you have any questions for me?
I have one question. You have finally got your passport. You have been involved with national team training. You have had success in this country. You're now playing at one of the biggest clubs in the country, if not the region. Do you see yourself being here for the next 10 years and adding to, do you see yourself being an Indonesian legend?
Where do I see myself in 10 years? And do I see myself as a legend? Indonesian legend.
Will you see yourself? Is that an aim?
The aim is to create a legacy in Indonesia where I will be remembered, or where people think of me that I set an example for the country in terms of professionalism. That's an aim I also set for myself, because you spoke about a topic earlier that people should aim to be the best in the world. I know I will not be the best in the world. Simple. I don't have the abilities to be the best in the world. I know that. But my aim is still to be the best in Asia for the moment. If I will ever reach that, I don't know. I will try to. And if I don't reach that, at least I tried everything I could. So with that being said, where do I see myself? I wish to play outside Indonesia one day, because to be able to improve myself, I think I need that. Otherwise, I will become in the factor that I will be too confident and too comfortable in Indonesia, where my growth will not increase but will drop at a certain moment. And then I choose for the most secure way. So with the passport as well, I think now I have the possibility to be able to reach beyond and increase my chances of potential again. So we will see where that ends, of what is the maximum for me as a player. But with that mindset, I hope to create a legacy for people and for the youth, that anything is possible. And I think with me having the Indonesian citizenship after 3.5 years in the country is something that people can already look up to and say, wow, nothing is impossible. If you really want something, go out and get it. And I think I did that, and I'm not done. It's just the beginning for me, and I hope I can continue my way up.
Awesome. Very good. Last question. Incoming national team head coach, brand new off the plane, doesn't know anything. What's the one bit of advice you give him?
Ooh. Listen to experienced people in the country about the Indonesian culture and football culture. Have your vision ready and your way of playing, and don't get distracted by opinion of people. But have in mind the Indonesian culture and the Indonesian football culture, but stick to your own plan and don't get distracted by your plan. If it works, if it not works, you will see in the end. But otherwise, it will be a red race, I think, where you will never have a good outcome.
Yeah.
Agree?
Good answer. That's fair. Yeah. That would help. That would definitely help. Yeah, for sure.
There are more things, yeah, but
a million things we could sit here and talk about. We could be here all day. We often are. We often are sitting here all day by the side of a pool talking about football. We do it quite a lot.
But no, I think that's the one advice maybe I will give.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you, my friend. I hope you enjoyed it.
All right, pal. No
See you.
problem at all.
Speak soon.
Take care, man. All the best to
Thanks
Cass.
for your time. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye.